Welcome back. Now, the protests promised by NASA to force reforms in the IEBC have started. On the other hand, Jubilee is fine-tuning amendments to cure what it describes as ambiguities in election laws and to raise a threshold for the Supreme Court to nullify elections. In the meanwhile, IEBC says it has addressed some of the demands and opened itself to more scrutiny by the coalitions. Tonight, with the big question we ask, are the parties in the dispute around the repeat election being reasonable? Talk to us on Twitter. The hashtag is a big question, and you can also text us on 22422. We speak to Varieda MP Otende Amolo, IEBC Commissioner Roslyn Akombe, and Senate Majority Leader Kipchumba Murkomen. Thank you all for making time for us. Tonight, I'll start with you, Honorable Otende Amolo. First, how do you describe your demos today? Do you think they were successful? And will the protest continue?
Thank you. I wouldn't quite know. I had intended to go for the demos. Okay, but I ended up being caught up in court.
Now that you say that, yeah, we have
first charge since Moi left, observation, and it took 5 hours.
Okay.
But I saw, I followed it in terms of the social media, and I think it was nipped in the bud. As I understand, the demonstrations, the demonstrators were only beginning, but they were turned back quite quickly by the police, and I saw quite a bit of tear gas there. Yes.
So have we seen the last of them? We haven't heard from NASA. Are they going to continue tomorrow, for example, or any other day? Or?
We are consulting, but I'm sure you've not seen the last of them.
Okay. Roslyn, of course, the commissioner with IEBC, Roslyn Akombe. These demos were against IEBC. I assume you were in the office or somewhere else meeting, I heard today. How was it for you, for you yourself as an individual for IEBC and IEBC itself, the commission?
Thank you very much, Hussein. I mean, I think as the chairman, Chibukati, put it in his letter to NASA yesterday, I mean, every Kenyan has a right to picket, every Kenyan has a right to demonstrate. But what the chairman has been appealing to NASA and actually to Jubilee, that let's sit around the table. Let's address issues, because the best way to address any concerns that you may have as Kenyans is by sitting around the table and dealing with these issues. So, I mean, that was a demonstration of the right of people to air their views. But we hope that we will move from the streets, we will move from any parliamentary changes we want to make, and sit down around the table tomorrow, as the chairman has appealed to both sides to address the core issues.
That's what you're proposing, of course, IEBC, and I'll come back to that later to find out whether they're planning to attend. Maybe a reaction from Murkomen about today's demos.
Well, I don't think they were demos. I don't think they actually took place. First of all, like the commissioner said and everybody else has said, including the president, we respect the right of every Kenyan to picket, to demonstrate, and to be able to pass the statement they want. The freedom of expression, freedom of speech, we respect that. We think that it's important for all of us to do so in a manner that protects also the interest of and rights of others. As long as nobody is looting any property, nobody is throwing stones, indecent behaviors like the one we saw, people undressing in public and so forth. I think any other demonstration is welcome. I schooled in Washington, D.C., and if you go to White House, around White House there's a place designated for people who are protesting. And sometimes, you know, you will find somebody who you are told he has been protesting for a whole 1 year or 2 years, just sitting there having a picture in a very organized manner. Okay. And I think as a country, we need to improve the standards. And since now this is a practice developed by Raila Odinga and his people, I think we need to move it to the next level, where they can protest for even a year, but in a more organized manner. Okay. Number two is that I want to assure the public that tomorrow we shall be at Bomas of Kenya, or any other place where IEBC has called. We respect the rule of law. We respect the independence of IEBC. We would like to go and discuss the agenda they are going to raise tomorrow. We will raise very serious questions with IEBC, but ultimately we'll allow them to make the decision they are going to make. We believe that this nation cannot be run by brickmanship and bullying, that people can be able to sit down. I was in the committee that worked on the laws that are now governing elections in this country. And it's only when people are sitting down and reasoning together that we can move this country forward.
Okay, Honorable Otende Amolo, I mean, the basis for this, or maybe Akombe should respond to this first, is demands by NASA, which they are calling irreducible demands. You responded to them yesterday. Clearly, they are not happy with the response. They were not satisfied. Are you still willing to listen to their demands?
Hussein, we have
to make any compromise?
Hussein, you know, as a commission, we have to listen. That is our responsibility. It is our responsibility to listen, but in the end, it's also our responsibility to take decisions. That while we consult, while we hear everybody, the Kenyan people expect us that we are going to be taking decisions in the best interest of the voter, in the best interest of our #1 stakeholder. We have looked at the 11 reducible minimums that had been given to us. I mean, a majority of those things are things that we ourselves, actually, if I call them our own staff, had been reviewing our own internal processes since the 1st of September. And they had come up with a page, you know, which is about 40, if I want to call them that, 40 irreducible minimums on our side of things that we as a commission feel very strongly that we need to do in order to make the election, the fresh election, much better than we had done with the 8th of August election. So when you look back at some of the issues that they had raised, there are things that were already within our radar. There are things that we felt that we needed to do. You know, make the process, the standardization of the Form 34B, look at the returning officers and the performance of returning officers, ensure that 3 things were made very clear throughout our processes, that process is important as much as the result is important, ensure that our processes are transparent, verifiable, and also traceable.
Okay, but among the key ones that they've talked about is about Al-Hurayr to print the ballot papers. They've talked about Saffron. They've talked about Safaricom now in supplying network, and of course the others, plus also the exit of Chiloba and other officials of IEBC.
You know, Hussein, that's why the chairman has been saying all along, let's sit around the table. We can never fail as Kenyans to find solutions to those issues that they have raised.
So you're saying from the response you gave NASA in writing yesterday, you are still willing to consider other things if you sit and talk?
And if Jubilee comes up with their own list tomorrow, we can look at it and say, as Kenyans, what is it that we can be able to do? We only have 28 days now to the election. There are things that can be done, and there are things that cannot be done practically. I mean, for instance, Hussein, to say that you look for a replacement to Safaricom, is that a realistic option? Can you be able to find another provider? It's like saying, let's look for another option to oxygen as it relates to the country, because when you're looking at the coverage, if we really want to transmit results electronically, the biggest provider that we have in the country is Safaricom. So if we are, you know, so basically it's to say that there are things that are practical that we can make changes.
So what is not practical? Is Al-Hurayr not printing the ballot papers practical?
I think that is an issue that is on the table. We have an offer from UNDP. We are checking that offer very seriously, and it's one of the issues that we would like to bring to the table tomorrow for discussion.
Is Chiloba quitting and other officials of IEBC quitting as demanded by NASA practicable to you? You know,
Hussein, one of the things that the Supreme Court actually made very clear is that there are systematic and systemic irregularities and illegalities that were found in the process. What we as a commission have been focusing on is looking at those specific things that are beyond personalities. There are things that we need to be able to fix so that regardless of who is the CEO or who is the commissioner, those processes are done in the right way. And that is really the focus and the attention that the commission has been paying to.
Okay, I still have a lot to ask you, but just one more question before I bring in Otiende Amolo. You're saying you decided to look at the system rather than personalities. Why? Why not personalities? Because what if personalities are a problem?
Because it's really important to look at, again, I'm going by what the Supreme Court has said. It has said, first of all, that it did not find any individual staff or any commissioner culpable. So based on that, what we have been trying to look at, what is it that we didn't do well? Which systems were wrong? How did we deal with our transmission of results? How do we ensure that the results path is very clear to everybody, and that result path is also known to all our staff, and that they are going to follow it? Because if you don't address those issues, if you don't look at the issues of ICT, how do you ensure transparency in the ICT? How do you ensure that agents are involved in all the processes that have to do with technology? Okay. Regardless of who you put at the commission, you'll still have those challenges. That is why it's absolutely important to look at those systems, to look at what the Supreme Court said on all these processes and try and fix them within the short time that we have.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Let me get a response from Tenda Walden.
Well, there's a lot to say, but let me start from where we left, the chairman's letter. I think as Dr. Kombe says, the spirit of the chairman's letter is all right. The content is off. The problem with the letter from the chairman, first, Dr. Kombe says they themselves have developed their own 40 irreducible minimum. Who knows about them? I'm sure you don't. I'm sure I don't. No one does. If they are genuine in terms of openness, they should have started by publishing their own irreducible minimum, so that we are not talking of NASA's 11. We are talking of IEBC's 40. Secondly, the problem with the response from the chairman is that it is superficial. It purports to respond to the issues, but it does not respond to the crux of the issue. It gives a palliative attention to those issues, and I can demonstrate that in so many ways. Thirdly, and this is the problem we have with that response, the NASA coalition has raised 11 fundamental issues. It was the expectation that once the stage is properly set, then we would discuss those 11 fundamental issues. But what the chairman has done is that the IEBC, through the chair, has taken a position on each of those issues and is communicating that position, and wants NASA to go for a meeting, not to discuss those issues, but to be explained to the position of IEBC. Now, that's not a meeting. In a meeting such as this, what you start by doing is you identify the issues, then secondly, you set the agenda jointly. Then thirdly, you meaningfully discuss each individual issue. But what the IEBC chairman has done, and IEBC generally, is to take a position, communicate that position, invite people for a meeting, attach an agenda that does not make it
based on your minimums, isn't it?
Yes.
Based on your reducible minimums.
The response is based on the reducible minimum. But
so you actually set that agenda?
No. We raised the issues. The expectation is that then we would meet to discuss how each issue is to be treated. But what happens right from the date, okay, is that the IEBC is communicating its position on each of those issues, not opening it to discussion. Now, if you look at the agenda, and the agenda is attached to that letter, you realize that the meeting is supposed to be a very superficial one. It is to give the chairman the opportunity to explain their position on the NASA's irreducible minimum, which does not address the fundamental issues. Now, it's, I think, quite important that if people are to talk, there's something called talks about talk. The first thing is to agree on some basics. The NASA's 11, that is the agenda. And to start by agreeing that the position communicated by the chairman is not the final position. It is merely indicative. The second thing is that we would start from where the public knows. The public knows that the chairman sent a memo to the CEO. We do not know what the response was. We are aware that the chairman sent a second memo. We still don't know what the response was. All those must be put on the table. And then the third thing is to now examine the various issues, including, as Dr. Kombe is saying, that asking that Safaricom should not be involved is impossible. Of course, everything must be put on the table, even Safaricom's involvement. And it is our position, for example, that if you look at that, there are certain very fundamental questions that must be answered, including by officials from Safaricom. So this would not just be a meeting, and it can't just be a meeting between us and Jubilee and
Can I respond so that the commissioner can respond to all of them?
Okay.
I think, first of all, I think we are discussing the symptoms. We are not discussing the problem.
Yep.
Like Otiende is saying, you know, we are just discussing the crux of the matter. We are dealing with a coalition led by a consistent complainant and whiner. The problem is not Chebukati. It can't be Dr. Okombe here. I mean, these are problems that started in the 1980s. Raila Odinga has fought Moi. He fought Kibaki. He fought Uhuru. He's now fighting Uhuru. Now, he's going to fight in Chiloba. And I want to say this very clearly. Chiloba...
But let's just
come to that point.
But there's a Supreme Court ruling.
No, I'm coming to that. His problem is not a problem of Chiloba. Do you really think, Hussein, that a 37-year-old Chiloba, old enough to be the grandson of Raila Odinga, could be the only stumbling block between him and elections? Don't you think that he's just a mere smokescreen? Don't you think that's just a mere excuse? Let's make it plain. We have a real problem, and a problem of people who are not ready for elections. And because they are not ready for elections, they want to create roadblocks. And when they create those roadblocks, they can't even remember which roadblocks they created at what point in time. And I want to say this. At some point, because I sat in the committee that worked in the elections, they actually wanted a situation where Raila would appoint half of the commissioners, half would come from Jubilee. Let me make it clear. Election is not about Jubilee or NASA. And for NASA to say, and this is what I want Commissioner to answer, because tomorrow we are going for an agenda. And we have, out of civility and responsibility on our side, we are going for the meeting. But the meeting tomorrow is to discuss an agenda set by NASA on 11 points and to go and discuss a memo or a letter this and letter that response between IEBC and NASA. But is IEBC about NASA? Is it only the only entity that we are going to be having to discuss left, right, and center? Suppose NASA doesn't want to participate in the elections. So I think is that we have accommodated our friends because we understand where they're coming from. We know whom we are dealing with. We have become very civilized, but that is not the problem. The problem is we have a coalition that is not ready for elections.
So after the Supreme Court ruling that found irregularities, illegalities, they did not follow the law in the process. Let me finish.
Why are we having...
Okay. After that Supreme Court ruling, if it wasn't NASA talking about reducible minimums, now to bring about this meeting called for IEBC, you as Jubilee would never have raised anything. You would have gone to the election with the same IEBC without raising any question.
You see, anybody who raises an issue, can raise out of good faith for purpose of changes or to improve the institution. And we have said that whatever NASA is raising must be given to IEBC. IEBC must, of its own motion, look at it. What is reasonable, they can accommodate. What is not reasonable, they can communicate why they can't be able to do so. Why is NASA so selective, so selective in the implementation of that ruling, which concludes so well that they could not find any culpability on the part of any commissioner or any person from the secretariat? Number two, when NASA is saying that we want to remove Chebukati and what's the other name? Not Chebukati, but Chiloba and Mohati. Of course, who do they want to replace with? Who do they want to replace with? Okay. And what is that immediate preference that they have? I thought that IEBC, the I in it, is an independent institution, and that if we are being told that we must respect the decision of Supreme Court, they must respect also and respect the independence of Supreme Court. They can criticize IEBC, but they must accept that it's an independent body to make its own decision. Okay, Dr. Kome, as you respond to this, plus what of course Otiende Amolo had raised earlier, Honorable Murkomen is talking about you being an independent commission, isn't it? Otiende Amolo has talked about the memos, which we haven't heard anything about since. We don't know if there was a response and what the response was. Plus, I remember immediately after the ruling, when Chebukati saying IEBC is independent and it will do its own independent audit, and after getting the detailed judgment, he will take action. Is that going to happen? What is happening now?
Thank you. Let me first go to the issues raised by Mheshimiwa Otiende. You know, NASA made it very clear to us that they will not attend any other meeting until we respond to their letter. So the chairman has gone ahead and responded to their letter because they demanded to have a written response. They say that they do not want to have any more boardroom discussions. They want to ensure that everything that we discuss is documented. So the response from the chairman is a demand that was made. It is not that the chairman has set up issues and is already presenting those issues to NASA and there is no room for discussion. So you have a situation in here in which a party says we will not go to your next meeting until you respond to the letter. And when you respond to the letter, then they say, why are you responding to the letter? You should have waited for us to sit down. So I mean, I think we need to be honest. We need to be transparent. The only reason the chairman responded to those are because those are issues that had been raised, and those are issues we had also discussed internally, because it was part of our the areas that we had identified that we needed to make better. So we were communicating, and by the way, the letter was written to both Jubilee and NASA. It was not only written to NASA, it was written to both, it was addressed to both Jubilee and to NASA.
Okay. And
it outlined those issues. You know, Mheshimiwa Murkomen is saying that the agenda is for tomorrow's meeting is based on NASA. Absolutely not. That agenda, if you recall, Mheshimiwa, was already provided to you. If you look at the agenda itself, was given to you when we had the talks at the boardroom, where the Deputy President represented Jubilee. So it's not an agenda that is driven by NASA, nor is it an agenda that is driven by Jubilee. It's an agenda that has been driven by the Commission as an independent body. That is, it has set up and said, these are the issues that we wish to bring to your attention for discussion. Hussein, as it relates to memos, it's my policy, it's my training that I do not respond to memos or anything that is leaked, because those are leaked documents, those are alleged leaked documents. I am not in a position to be able to respond to any leaked documents or alleged leaked documents out there.
So are you saying this memo does not exist?
I mean, look, that is my training. I will stick to that training.
That
I do not
public domain that it exists, and we even heard that Chiloba was quoted as saying he will respond to the chairman about this memo. Yes, it is within the purview of IEBC, but IEBC is an independent body mandated by Kenyans to conduct elections, which has been found to have conducted those elections irregularly and illegally. And we have some key issues being raised in this memo. Are you suggesting we just leave it because it's a leaked memo, it's an internal affair, we forget about the key issues that have been raised in that memo?
And those are the key issues that the chairman has raised. If you read carefully all the communication that he has put out there that is in the public domain, he has raised issues of ICT that are there. He has also included them in the letter that he has written to both parties and given solutions on how he thinks we should make it, you know, we should improve the situation.
He was directing the blame at some officials of IEBC.
But you see, those are internal processes. I mean, I think when we talk about the independence of the Commission, that is basically what we are talking about.
So will there be any action based on this judgment, as IEBC promised through the chair, that there will be action after the detailed judgment? Is there going to be action against officials of IEBC?
I believe very strongly that the Commission is working, the chairman is working with his commissioners to look at various stuff. What did they do? What was their role? And he's also cooperating very closely with the office of EACC. We understand that we have already been approached formally by EACC and ODPP, and we are going to provide every cooperation that is required towards ensuring that those processes are done. I understand the chairman also has specific proposals on some staff changes, but those are internal processes that the Commission is already doing.
Will be done before.
And we are seeking that that the political actors allow the Commission to undertake those internal reviews. I mean, nobody goes to the Supreme Court and tells them, these are the people, you need to move your secretary here and you need to move your clerk there. Why is it that people feel that it is their responsibility to come to the Commission and tell the Commission, this is what you need to change, move this secretary here, move this clerk here? We are responsible Kenyan citizens. We live in this country. We understand what is going on, and we will do what is responsible for the country. That is why the chairman has put together the project team.
There are a lot of questions, obviously, because you're from IEBC. There are questions from IEBC. Just if I could ask two more. One, because we don't know about the nature of investigations, the investigations by the Director of Public Prosecutions, and Murkomen can also answer this, and even Agenda Mozo. If these investigations ultimately, because it's 21 days that were ordered, touch on you as the Commissioner, and recommend prosecution, your prosecution or any others, Commissioner's prosecution or other officials, what happens? Would you want to continue overseeing the next election if then you're being investigated yourself?
In 21 days? Look,
because that's what the DPP said. The investigation should be done in 21 days.
If it is something that comes, and again here I can only speak on my own behalf as a Commissioner, if there is anything that comes and personally touches on my integrity and touches on my ability to perform, I will step down. That
you will not preside over the next election.
I mean, if authorities that have been given the responsibility to look at culpability find that I, Roslyn Kwamboka Akombe, is responsible for anything that happened during the election process, I will step down, because I believe very strongly that if you are going to be found to be criminally liable in a process, then I as Roslyn, will not see myself as a person. That's not my training. My training is that if I am found to be guilty of something, then I will have no choice but to step aside for the sake of the country. Do
you think the same should apply to the rest then?
I can only speak for myself. And here we are talking about an abstract case in which the office of the director of prosecution finds me guilty of those offenses.
Well, let's speak about what I saw quoted finally on the dailies. You were quoted as saying your life is in danger, that your brother has had to leave this country because of the job you do right now. What did you mean? Your life is in danger from who or from what?
You know, Hussein, I think the Kenyan people right now, what they would want to hear me talk about is what am I doing as a commissioner to ensure that the fresh elections take place. The Kenyan people expect that when I took up this responsibility, I knew the demands of this responsibility and I knew what it comes out with. And so my focus really would be to respond to the questions that you have on what is it that we are doing to ensure that this election is credible, it's fair, it's transparent, and is one
because we have other people in the panel. I'll leave it at that. But am I to assume your life is no longer in danger when you're saying that?
I have not said that. I said that the interest of the Kenyan people at this time is not about Roslyn Akombe's life.
Okay, let me get to Tina.
Well, I think Dr. Akombe has evaded a lot of questions. I will not probe the one on her personal life because she's entitled to that. But all the others must be probed. First of all, there is nothing like not responding to a leaked memo. That concept of leakage in Kenya is lawful. When I was the ombudsman, the law and the constitution allows any person to file even anonymous complaints. The law in this country not only allows but encourages whistleblowers to raise anything in any institution with any public authority or indeed with the public, because that's an aspect of probity. So the question cannot be whether the memos were leaked or not. The question that Dr. Akombe and IEBC must answer is, were the memos issued? The next question is, were they responded to? What were the responses? When we see something as fundamental as the chair asking the CEO who switched off the KIEMS kits on 5th of August, 3 days before elections, there's nothing internal about that. The election is not about IEBC. And for your information, the independence, the I in IEBC is not for its own sake. It is for the sake of Kenyans. And therefore that probity must be there. There's nothing private or internal about IEBC. It must operate in the open, in the interest of all Kenyans. Secondly, Senator Murkomen, and we've had this discussion a lot, Senator Murkomen and a number of his colleagues in Jubilee believe that the more ferociously you attack the person of Raila, the more you make your point against NASA. Why they believe that, I wonder, when people like Senator Murkomen is now the leader of majority in the Senate, the entire edifice of what Raila fought for. When people are discussing issues, you do not achieve points by trying to denigrate one of the leaders. You do not, and you will never hear me trying to attack the person of Uhuru Kenyatta to make a point against Jubilee. That is not how to debate. You go to the focus of the debate, and the issue is this. In this debate, in the issues raised by NASA, are they logical or not? The attitude they take is the attitude that has cost taxpayers 25 billion shillings. Why? Before 8th of August, most of the issues that we raised in the Supreme Court, we had raised. Jubilee said there were non-issues. Somehow, IEBC acquiesced, and we went into that election. We did not address those issues. In the words of the Supreme Court, the IEBC handled the presidential elections casually, and equally handled the response in the Supreme Court casually. The Jubilee team would want us to go for these fresh presidential elections with the same casual attitude. We cannot do that.
You, for example, called for the investigations of these officials, even wrote to the DPP. And this is something Rosie Nakombe has for herself.
Yes.
If it turns out like that, I mean, that was a hypothetical question. So you've gone to the DPP, you've said ABCD should be investigated. Then 2 days later, you go out and you say they need to be out. And you went to the DPP, and the DPP is doing investigations. Why can't you wait? Because she, for example, if I use the example, said, if I'm found culpable or there are charges against me, I will step aside. Why can't you wait for that so that we know person A has been charged with ABCD before you go out and just say remove them from office?
I will tell you why. First, in fairness to Dr. Kombe, fortunately, her name has not featured in any of the documents we have dealt with. Fortunately for her. Yet, we don't know. But why can't we wait? The principle is very simple. Number one, although we've written to the DPP, we are demanding prosecution, not investigation. Because in our view, there's sufficient evidence. Where does that evidence come from? First of all, the chairman's own memo identifies at least 3 officers on very clear grounds.
Okay.
Secondly, the Supreme Court did mention 3 officials. 3 officials, Chiloba, Kasait, and Muhati, as having intentionally tried to mislead the Supreme Court, as having maintained a position in respect of certain things that was not true. But more importantly, the principle has always been, and that this is the principle that must be applied. It is not, for example, that if Dr. Kombe is finally found culpable, then she steps aside. The principle in this country has always been, in accordance with the Constitution, that if you have been adversely mentioned, then when the investigations are being conducted, you must step aside. That is why the President went to Parliament and mentioned a raft of officials, and they all had to step aside. That is how Ngilu, for example, left the cabinet. That is how Waiguru left the cabinet. Okay. That is the principle.
But he has been asked.
So all these people who have been mentioned, and interestingly, the people mentioned in the DPP's letter coincide with some of the people mentioned in the Supreme Court and the people identified in NASA's letter. Okay. They must step aside.
So he has been saying, and Jubilee has been saying, and Munkomen also said it before, are you being selective? For example, when you say the Chiloba and 11 others should leave the office. We know the returning officer, for example, was Chebukati. You haven't talked about Chebukati. In fact, we had Honorable Lutangula saying Chebukati was just a victim in all this, he should not leave. Yet he was the second respondent in the case. And he was saying IEBC did the best job and IEBC did nothing wrong in the case. Where you are the petitioner, isn't it?
Yes.
So why not him?
Can I?
I thought I was asked.
Yeah,
unless you want to answer for me.
And then respond.
We are being selective because the evidence before us suggests a different picture. First of all, you realize that, interestingly, although Chebukati as the chair was actually a party to the Supreme Court decision, the Supreme Court did not identify his name adversely. It mentioned 3 others. Secondly, it is clear to us, based on the chairman's memos, which for some reason, despite as loud as Chiloba has always been before the election, that at all material time, his responses are sneaked and they are hiding under some kind of law. Why can't he respond robustly the way he has always done? I mean,
as I said earlier, in this game, there is the main actor, the protagonist, and the others are supporting cast like Atiendo Molo. You look for them, a small corner there. We cannot come here and discuss about NASA and don't talk about the philosophy of Raila Odinga as a man who has been in his style and stature and style of leadership, either violent or bully. And if we go back to that philosophy, we can understand the man we are dealing with, and his supporting cast and the rest of the team that works with. And so it doesn't shock me that they are doing what they are doing. That is just responding to Amolo's initial argument. So when we talk about Raila Odinga, we are talking about a philosophy of bullying and violence and intimidation, because let's go to the facts. The Supreme Court mentioned so many people in terms of commissioners. It talked about presiding officers. It talked about Chiloba swore this document, Muhati did this. In fact, they spent so much time about the chairman, to the extent even they said, had he, in fact, one of the things that they accused the chairman for was declaring results without having verified 34A forms, you know, from the whole country. But you know what? Selective amnesia. In fact, it raises questions as to whether they have cut deals with the chairman. Because if you pick the CEO and pick another peripheral person, you know, somewhere at the corner there, called some small person there in the 11th number, forget about the chairman, forget about the commissioners who are here. Were these commissioners not responsible in doing anything?
There's no evidence.
I mean, I was just saying, if it's a commission, there is a role that commissioners can do. There is, and the same Supreme Court made a direct, it's not even indirect finding, that we could not find any culpability on any part of a commissioner or on part of the staff. Okay. And so saying, first of all, because you gave Otieno enough time, we have to make this point, that it is important that NASA make a decision what they want to do. You know, they are talking about people stepping aside even before investigations are done. In the other hand, the people who stepped aside when the names were brought in Parliament were those who were in list of the EACC, you know, and these EACC are the ones now who are trying to find out. They have not even found a name. They're just investigating the whole commission. They haven't even said, is it Commissioner X or Commissioner Y or the CEO or who else. Number three, in that investigation, Orengo and Mudavadi are actually being investigated. And there could be a finding that Raila Odinga interfered with the elections, by the way. So should we be saying that Raila Odinga should step aside from his candidature as a presidential candidate of NASA until we find out whether he assisted in the hacking of the system through Orengo and Mudavadi? Okay. So
would you want more comment then to continue with this process? IEBC continues with this process with people who are being actively investigated for mismanaging an election just a few days ago.
You know what? You know, we know, at least we know our colleagues. Yeah, they are not interested in the investigations.
Are you?
They are not interested in putting people aside. No, what the interest is to disable IEBC so that elections does not take place within the 60 days.
So are you interested in correcting what went wrong in IEBC yourself and Jubilee?
I am saying this: if IEBC, and I like the way the commissioner said, if IEBC, in regard to its independence, and they are not answerable to NASA alone or Jubilee alone, they are answerable to every citizen of this republic. If they would find within their ranks that someone committed a mistake or an offense, or that someone bungled the elections, they must be able internally to make the decision, either by one stepping aside or that person being fired in the process that are provided by law. But you can't have a situation where someone goes, picks goons from somewhere to come and undress around IEBC buildings so that they can be able to get people out of office.
We have to wind up because of time, and I'll start still with you, just 30 seconds if you may. So tomorrow we have a meeting. We don't know if Otieno will tell us on his time whether they'll attend the meeting or not. But how do we find a solution to this then, according to you?
The solution is there. The Constitution never contemplated a situation where one player is going to dictate to the referee on how to behave. So there is a solution. And the solution is by NASA behaving like the Constitution required them to behave. Number two is that we have a solution if people are willing to sit down and listen. And listen. You know, part of communication is listening. But you know, NASA, from every day, they give us press conference in the morning, lunch hour in the evening. Morning, lunch hour in the evening. They don't listen to anybody, and they expect to dictate to everybody to accommodate them, and they can't accommodate the rest of Kenyans. Look at the answer that Otieno Omolo was giving. He is telling the commission, oh yeah, you answered, but you didn't answer to our satisfaction.
Okay,
you know?
So you
and yes,
we
are not coming for the
tomorrow
meeting.
You're willing to...
Tomorrow we are in the meeting. We are willing to listen to anything and everything, and we will be able to share any ideas that we have. And we expect the Commission, based on its independence, to sieve the issues that they think they are useful for purpose of carrying this country forward. But I want to tell the nation, we are in a situation that we never contemplated in many years, that it would be in this situation. But I'm very impressed the way Kenyans have conducted themselves maturely and carried through these processes. But we must say it is not to bullying. All leaders that are seeking to be in elective office and those who are in must be able to willing to be subjected to the Constitution and sit down and listen to the views of the people.
I think that talks and meaningful talks are always important and welcome. But what is more dangerous than not talking is having superficial talks, because then it gives the impression that you are moving and yet you are not moving. Talks must be meaningful. The position Jubilee takes is that nothing wrong happened on 8th of August. Everything that the Supreme Court said is wrong. The IEBC is perfect, and therefore nothing should be done or changed. And that is why, even the last time there was the invitation, you saw that our principal Raila went to IEBC offices. The deputy president came much later, very casual, you know.
You see?
When Jubilee says that they're willing to go for talks, in the same breath they're saying they want to amend the IEBC Act, they want to amend the Supreme Court Act. It demonstrates they are not genuine, they are not honest. They think that you can play around with Kenyans, provided that somehow you get to 26 and just some sort of election.
Okay.
Our position is, we need to do Kenyans one favor. We need to, at least for the first time in 20 years, get one election right. That is something we share in common, I hope, with the IEBC. Obviously not Jubilee.
But not with Kenya.
What we need to agree on is how to arrive there. We cannot arrive there by keeping some cards on the table.
Okay.
That these ones are internal, these ones I don't know what. That is what we must avoid.
So will you attend this meeting tomorrow as NASA?
It is still open to question if IEBC commits one, that the positions taken in its letter are not final. Are not final. That's number one. Two, if it commits to openness, not keeping that some things are internal, so that everything is put on the table. And three, if there's meaningful commitment that everybody else will attend. If you want the principals to attend, you don't send Senator Murkomen to attend with Raila Odinga.
So,
yes,
meaning
but the meeting is 9 o'clock tomorrow.
It is, in theory, it is still possible, but it has to be meaningful.
He has not consulted.
Finally, let me get to Rosalina Kombe's finding remarks then. About tomorrow's meeting, what do you expect?
Okay, thank you very much. Before I respond to that, you know, Senator, you made a comment about, you know, the possibility that the chairman Chebukati might have made a deal with the NASA, and that is why his name is not on the list. I really want to say, you know, categorically say that such pronouncements really are not helpful. You know, trying to box people in one place or another. I've been a victim of attempts to box me in and call me NASA, which I never will be. I will never be Jubilee. I will never be NASA. I have no screenshots of conversations with Senator Orengo or some other politicians, but those are attempts that in this country, there is no, when an individual takes a position and takes a position because they want to do the right thing, people find it easy to box them inside one place and call them NASA or call them Jubilee, which is not correct. The chairman is an independent chairman who is doing his work professionally and wants to do the right thing. So he has not cut any deals with NASA. He does not intend to cut any deals with NASA, nor do I intend to cut any deals with NASA, nor am I a mole of NASA or anybody else. I'm an impartial person, served as an international civil servant for the past 15 years. I do not intend to change that. Finally, Hussein, I really hope that tomorrow both Jubilee and NASA will come to the table, because that's what the Kenyans expect them to do. Kenyans do not expect them to be going to Parliament to make changes, election changes very late in the day.
So that plan by Jubilee to make amendments you don't agree with?
Because it will have an impact. I mean, let me explain to you as a trainer now. As somebody who has been working on training with the staff for the last 1 week. We are trying to develop the manuals, the training manuals, to ensure that the mistakes that we had on 8th of August, whereby changes were made very late and we were communicating things by WhatsApp, by memos very late. We do not want to have a repeat of that. If you start having amendments to the law 29 days to election, it has an impact of the training. Because it means that you have trained people, then you have to change them.
Just on that one.
You're saying, okay, basically you're saying you're free to make any amendments.
No, that's the point. You know, when we say, Commissioner, with all due respect, that, you know, certain positions people are taking, we suspect so-and-so is with NASA, it's because of utterances. I mean, I just said here that if the chairman is being selected and protected by the same people who want to chase the CEO, then it raises those questions. I didn't say that it just makes us think maybe they cut a deal.
Okay.
But you see, I would not have even expected you to enter into this debate of amending the law, not because we have a position that is NASA versus Jubilee.
No, but I'm explaining
and immediately you enter into that debate, you box yourself.
And that is the problem, that in this country you cannot say the right thing. That if you say the right thing, you are going to be boxed into one side. As a trainer, I'm explaining to you, Senator, that if you are going to make changes to how we are going to have the result path, if you are going to make changes on how the presiding officers are going to operate in the polling station, be aware that there will be an impact. That these people, whom we have already started training, will then have to have a different set of training. And what will happen is that there's confusion. There's confusion on polling day. That is all I'm saying. And all I'm saying is that if people have those issues, bring them to the table tomorrow. Okay. Instead of going to the streets in NASA, instead of going and engaging in streets demonstrations, come to the table. Come to Bomas tomorrow. Sit down. There are no cards we are hiding anywhere. We'll put all our cards on the table, because the only card we have as the Commission is a card of ensuring that we have an election on the 26th of October. We will not be the reason for any delay in the election. We are prepared both logistically, operationally, and in all aspects to ensure that we deliver a better election than what we did.
You are already prepared.
I just want to assure the Commission.
So if you're already prepared, what is the need for tomorrow?
But that's why we need to sit down with both sides. Okay. They have raised concerns. Jubilee has raised concerns. Let's look at what the concerns are. Okay. And let's
I just want to assure the Commissioner that if and when we bring legal amendments, we are reasonable people to ensure that we take care of all those concerns. Number two, that in the public participation, our main stakeholder will be IEBC and, of course, the people of Kenya. So you don't need to worry too much about what you have only heard in the news, and you are reacting to something that you've not even seen. Maybe the amendment we are going to make is what will affect the elections in 50 days.
That's why you need to come to the table.
Worry about that.
And that is why I didn't want to go in, because that is another debate altogether. But we'll see, because we've heard from our sources in Jubilee that these amendments are coming. Yeah. We'll see when that happens. We'll have
they are coming. You don't need other sources. I'm here.
So the amendments
they are coming. But as to what impact it will have, we will come and discuss that.
Okay, I have to wind up now. So will these amendments be about ambiguities in election laws and to raise a threshold to the Supreme Court not to be able to annul elections?
Yeah, those are different things, you know. That's why I'm saying you can call us the day after tomorrow. We'll come and discuss that.
I can tell you for free. There are those amendments, and Senator Murkomen has spoken about them. Jubilee thinks that because they have numbers they can amend anything. It will be idle. They will be struck down as unconstitutional.
We are alive to that. Yes. We do our job as a legislature.
That is opening up another discussion altogether. But
you know, Honorable Otiendo Molo has just arrived to Parliament. He needs to relax. We take him around how Parliament works.
You know I'm your senior, so you need to listen.
No, on the legal profession, yes. But in Parliament, I am your 10 times senior.
Okay, thank you all for making time for us tonight. I think we needed more time tonight, but we thank you still for making time for us tonight. Senator Kipchumba Murkomen of Market County, also the Senate Majority Leader, Dr. Roslyn Akombe is the Commissioner with IEBC, and Otiende Amolo, MP. Rieda, thank you so much for making time for us tonight. Keep talking to us. The hashtag is the big question on Twitter. You can text us on 22422. We are asking you tonight, are the parties in the dispute around the repeat election being reasonable? We're back after this break.